My wolf was dying, and I, who had never in my life been unable to do a thing, could do nothing but hold his great gray head against my knees and listen to him scream. Bram had been at my side for 11 winters. He had pulled me out of the river the year my father died. He had lain across the foot of my bed through every fever, every long night when the weight of Emberhold felt like a stone set on my chest. Now he thrashed on the floor of my own great hall, and the sound coming out of him was not a wolf's sound at all. It was the sound of something being torn slowly in two. The barb was buried high in his shoulder, close under the spine, in the soft place where the neck met the body. A raider's dart, black-fletched, its point smeared with something that turned the flesh around it the color of a bruised plum. I had pulled 100 arrows from 100 bodies in my life. I reached for that one, and Bram's whole frame convulsed so hard that he flung me back against the hearthstone and snapped at the air where my hand had been, and I understood. The poison had made his own body a trap. To touch the wound was to send him mad with pain. To leave it was to let it climb toward his heart. 3 healers had already tried. Osric, my master healer, a wolf who had tended this pack for 40 years and buried 2 alphas, had crouched over Bram with his poultices and his silver needles and his low crooning voice, and Bram had nearly taken his arm off. The 2 younger healers under him would not go near the beast at all now. They stood pressed to the far wall with the rest of my council, and their faces told me the thing none of them would say aloud. "Let him go, Doran. There is nothing to be done." I was still holding him. My arms were shaking. Outside the tall windows the snow came down thick and silent over the peaks, and somewhere below the hall the ninefold spring steamed up through the dark, the sacred waters that had healed my people for 1,000 years and could not touch this. I bent my head to Bram's ear. "Not you," I told him. "Not like this, do you hear me? I forbid it." As if a king could forbid death. He whined and shuddered, and his golden eye rolled up to find me, and there was such trust in it, such patient animal trust, that something in my throat closed and would not open. That was when the doors of the hall groaned inward on a gust of freezing wind, and a woman I had never seen walked into the middle of my grief. She was human. I knew it at once. No wolf carried that scent, that thin, ordinary warmth with no beast beneath it. She was small and soaked through from the climb, snow melting in her dark hair and running down her face, and she wore the plain gray of a valley healer, a satchel of worn leather slung across her body. She stopped a few paces inside the door and took in the whole of it in one long look, the thrashing wolf, the cowering healers, the king on the floor with blood on his hands, and she did not flinch, and she did not run. "Who let a human up the mountain?" Osric's voice cracked across the hall. "Girl, this is the Alpha King's hall, and that is the Alpha King's own wolf, and it is beyond any hands, let alone a human's. Go back down before you're killed." She didn't look at him, she looked at Bram. "How long has he been like this?" she asked. Her voice was quiet, but it carried, the way a healer's voice learns to carry over pain. "Since dawn," I heard myself say. Osric turned on me. "My king, you cannot mean to." "Since dawn," I said again, and my eyes did not leave the woman. "And every hour he is worse, and you have told me there is nothing left to do." I did not raise my voice. I did not need to, so there is nothing she can make worse. The woman crossed the hall. She did not hurry and she did not creep. She came the way you approach a frightened animal, steady and unafraid, letting it see the whole of you. She knelt down across from me, on the other side of Bram's heaving body, and set her satchel aside without opening it. She did not reach for a poultice. She did not reach for a needle. She simply looked at him, at the whole long gray length of him, and I watched her eyes move down his body the way another person's eyes move down a page. "Don't touch the wound," I said. "It drives him." "I know," she said. "The poisons made the whole road to it scream. Press anywhere near it and his body fights you before his mind can even ask why." She tilted her head. "So we don't go near it. Not yet." "Then what," Osric began, contempt thick in it, "do you propose to?" "Be quiet," she said, without heat, without even turning, and to my astonishment the old healer went quiet. She held out one hand toward Bram, low, palm down, not touching. Bram's lip peeled back. A growl came up out of him like grinding stones. "I know," she murmured to him, not to us. "I know it hurts. I'm not going for the bad place. I'm going somewhere that's going to help. You don't know that yet. You'll have to trust me a moment before you understand." And she kept her hand there, hovering, letting him smell it, letting him decide, while the growl rolled and did not quite break into a snap. Then she laid 2 fingers, only 2, against a spot low on his chest, far from the wound, in the soft hollow behind the point of his front leg where I would never in 100 years have thought to touch. And she pressed. I do not know how to describe what happened. It was not sudden. It was like watching water find its level. The growl thinned. The terrible rigid arch of his spine eased, one knot of muscle at a time from the chest outward. His thrashing slowed to a tremble, and the tremble slowed to a shiver, and the shiver stilled. And Bram, my Bram, who had let no one but me lay a hand on him in a day of agony, let his great head sink down into the woman's lap and lay still, breathing, alive. The whole hall had gone silent. I could hear the snow against the windows. "There," the woman said softly to the wolf. Her thumb moved a fraction, found some other point I could not see, held it. "There, that's it. Now your body will stop fighting me and I can go and get the thing that's hurting you, and you're going to let me, aren't you? Yes, you are." I became aware that I had stopped breathing. I made myself start again. And in the same moment, I have never told anyone this, and I am telling it now only because it is the truest part of the whole story. In the same moment, her fingers found that quiet point in my dying wolf and eased him. Something eased in me. Low in my own chest, under the breastbone, there was a knot I had carried so long I had stopped calling it pain. I had carried it since I was a boy of 9 standing at my father's pyre, and understanding that from that day the whole weight of Emberhold was mine and mine alone, that I would never again be allowed to be afraid where anyone could see. 11 years of grief for my mother, a lifetime of holding and holding and holding. That knot had been part of me so long I thought it was simply the shape a king's heart took. When she pressed the point over Bram's heart, the knot in mine came loose. I felt it go. I felt it the way you feel a held breath finally leave you. I sat there with my hands full of my wolf's blood and my eyes stinging in front of my whole council, undone by a thing I could not name, staring at a small wet human woman who had walked in out of the snow and reached, without ever touching me, into a place inside me that 40 years of healers and 1,000 years of sacred springs had never found. She looked up. Our eyes met across Bram's gray body. Whatever was on my face, she saw it, and something in her own went still and startled, as though she too had felt a thing she had no word for. "I'll need boiling water," she said, a little unsteadily, looking away. "Clean cloth. And someone to hold his back legs gently in case he wakes before I'm finished. Not you," she added when Osric moved. "You frightened him once already, him." She nodded at a young healer against the wall, the least proud of them. "You have quiet hands, come." I did not give the order. I did not need to. My hall obeyed her. Her name was Ilsa. I learned it while she worked. She worked for the better part of an hour, and I knelt the whole time at Bram's head with his skull heavy in my hands, and I watched her do a thing that all my wolfcraft, all my pack's ancient knowledge, could not have imagined. She never once fought the poison head-on. Instead, she moved around Bram's body, pressing here, holding there, each touch loosening something, so that by the time she finally came to the black wound itself, his body had forgotten to guard it. She drew the barb out slowly, a hair's breadth at a time, murmuring the whole while, and Bram, who had flung a 40-year master healer across the room, only sighed and pressed his head harder into my hands and let her. The barb came free. The wound bled clean and dark. She pressed a poultice into it that smelled of nothing I knew, bound it, and only then, when it was done, did she sit back on her heels and let out a long breath and begin, very slightly, to shake. "He'll live," she said. "The poison hadn't reached his heart. Another few hours and it would have. Keep him warm, keep him still, and when he'll take water, let him drink from the spring. The mineral in it will help." She wiped her hands on a cloth. "He's a good soul. He was so brave. He didn't understand what I was doing, and he let me anyway." I looked at my wolf, breathing slow and easy with his head in my lap, and I found I could not speak. Osric found speech enough for both of us. "It's a trick," he said. He had recovered his contempt, though it wore thinner now. "Some valley slight. She's numbed the beast, that's all. A human woman cannot truly heal a wolf. It's against every—" "Osric," my voice came out lower than I meant. He stopped. "In the years you have served this pack, has anything you have ever done put your hand into that wolf's mad grief and drawn it out again?" He said nothing. "Then perhaps," I said, "you might be quiet and learn." He went white about the mouth, and I knew I had made an enemy of my oldest servant's pride, and in that moment, with my wolf alive under my hands, I did not care at all. I turned to the woman. She had gathered herself and was fastening her satchel, plainly meaning to walk back down the mountain into the snow and the dark, having saved the thing I loved most in the world and asking nothing. "Ilse," I said. It was the first time I had spoken her name. It sat strangely in my mouth, and rightly, and I knew even then that I would be speaking it for the rest of my life. "You will not walk down that mountain tonight." She looked up warily. "My king, I don't need." "It is snowing hard enough to bury a wolf, let alone a woman with no fur to her name," I said. "You will stay in Emberhold as my guest. As my honored guest," I added, with a look at Osric that closed his mouth again. "You have saved the Alpha King's own wolf. There is no roof in these mountains that would not be shamed to turn you out into the cold, least of all mine." She hesitated. She was measuring me, I saw it, the healer's quick appraisal, the same look she had given Bram, reading me for whether I was to be trusted. Whatever she saw seemed to decide her. "One night," she said, "then I go back down. My village will want their healer." "One night," I agreed, and did not believe it for a moment, and neither, I think, did she. She stayed the night. Then Bram could not be moved, and someone had to watch him, and no one but Ilse could calm him when the wound fever rose, and so she stayed the next day, and the next. And Emberhold, which had watched a human woman walk into its hall with folded arms and hard faces, began, one soul at a time, to change its mind about her. It was Mara's boy who did the most to turn them. Mara was one of the hearth keepers, a widow, and her son had been born with a leg that turned wrong, so that he walked with a lurch and a stick, and had never once run with the other pups. On the third morning Ilse found the boy watching her tend Bram, and she watched him back, watched the way he stood, the way he held himself, and afterward she asked Mara quietly if she might look at the leg. "Every healer in the pack has looked at it," Mara said, not unkindly, only tired. "It's the way he's made. There's no changing what a soul is born with." "No," Ilse agreed. "There's no changing what he's born with. But there's a difference between a leg that's made wrong and a leg that's made right and has spent 9 years learning to move wrong because the first way hurt. May I?" She spent an hour with the boy. She pressed and held and eased all along the twisted line of him, the way she'd eased Bram, finding the knots his own body had tied over years of guarding a pain, and loosening them one by one. She did not make his legs straight. She was too honest a healer to promise a miracle, but when she was done the boy stood and put his weight down, and the lurch was less. And she taught Mara the points to press each morning, and made her repeat them back until she had them, and told her that a body could be taught slowly to stop bracing against a hurt that was long past. A week later the boy left his stick against the wall, and did not pick it up again. After that the hard faces were gone. The hunters brought her their old wounds, the ones that ached before a storm. The elders brought her their stiff hands. The young mothers brought her their fretful pups, and she tended every one of them the same way, kneeling, unhurried, listening with her hands to a thing the rest of us had no ears for. Word went down the mountain and back up it, and folk began to climb to Emberhold, not to petition their alpha, but to sit outside the healer's room and wait their turn with the human woman who could find the point where the pain lived and press it out of you. Osric grew colder with every one of them. I watched it happen and I understood it, though it shamed me for him. He had been the hand this pack reached for in its suffering for 40 years, and now they walked past him to a girl with no wolf in her at all. Once I came upon them in the passage outside the healer's room, Osric with his back to the wall and his old face carved into something ugly, and Ilse standing very still before him. "Do not know what you are," he was saying low. "No human reads a body so. It isn't natural. There is something in you that shouldn't be, and this pack will see it in time, and then we will see how they love their little valley witch." "Osric," I did not shout. I have found a king rarely needs to. He turned and the color left his face. "You have served 3 alphas. You served my father who loved you. For his sake I will say this once and gently. That woman drew my wolf back from death with her bare hands while you stood at the wall. Whatever she is a healer to the marrow, and she has done nothing to this pack but mend it. If I hear that you have frightened her again, or turned one soul against her, you will spend the rest of your years tending sheep in the low pasture and calling it mercy. Do you understand me?" "Yes, my king." He went. Ilse let out a slow breath. "You didn't have to do that," she said. "I've been called worse than a witch. It doesn't reach me anymore." "It reaches me," I said, and heard how much it said and did not take it back. She looked at me then, really looked, the healer's reading look, and for a moment neither of us said anything, and the passage was very quiet, and the spring steamed up faintly through the floor. "How is the knot?" she asked. I did not pretend not to understand her. She had felt it too, that first night. I had known it from her face. Between us there had never been any need to name the thing out loud. We had simply gone on around it, the way you go on around a fire you both know is there. "Loose," I said. "For the first time in my life. I keep waiting for it to come back. It hasn't." "It might some days," she said. "The old hurts do, but once a body's learned it can let go, it doesn't forget how." She paused. "You carry more than any person should. I felt it the moment I touched your wolf. You've been holding your whole self clenched around a grief so long you thought it was just you." "It was just me," I said. "Until you walked in out of the snow." She looked away, and her cheeks colored, and she busied her hands with nothing. "I should have gone back down that first morning," she said quietly. "Yes," I said. "Why didn't you?" She didn't answer, but she didn't leave either, and I had learned by then that with Ilse the leaving not done said more than any words. I learned why the barb had come for Bram on the 10th day, and it turned my blood to ice. My scouts brought in a raider, one of a band that had been striking the far steadings all winter, burning what they could not carry, poisoning wells and killing stock. This one had been caught circling too close to Emberhold itself. He was thin and hard-eyed, and did not fear me the way a man ought to fear an alpha king in his own hall, and when I asked him why his band had come so far up into my mountains, he laughed. "Not for your sheep, Wolf King," he said. "For you, there's coin on your head, a great deal of it. Someone wants the Hyrich without its alpha, and a king with a mate and pups defends himself twice as hard as a king alone. So first the king before he's a king worth killing for." He grinned, gap-toothed. "The dart wasn't for the beast. It was for you. The beast just got between." I stood very still. Bram, healing on his cushion by the fire, lifted his head. The barb had been meant for me. Bram had taken it in my place, had put his own body between me and a poisoned death, as he had put himself between me and every danger for 11 years, and it had very nearly killed him, and would have, and only a human woman walking up my mountain out of nowhere had made it otherwise. I thought of Ilse's 2 fingers on my wolf's heart. I thought of how close I had come, without ever knowing it, to standing at a third pyre, my own not far behind. "There are more of them," I said, "coming." "Oh, aye," said the raider, "a great many more, soon." And he laughed again, and I had him taken away before I did something a king should not. That night I did not go to my chambers. I went to the healer's room, where Ilse sat by lamplight grinding something in a mortar, and I told her all of it, the coin on my head, the dart meant for me, the band gathering below to finish what one barb had failed to do. I do not know why I told her. I had not told my counsel so plainly. But I had learned in 10 days that Ilse was the one soul in Emberhold before whom I did not have to hold myself clenched, and the words came out of me the way the knot had come loose, because with her, at last, they could. She listened without a word until I was done. Then she set down the mortar. "Then I'm not going back down the mountain," she said. "Ilse, don't," she stood. "You have a pack full of hunters and warriors, and I have no claws and no fur, and I couldn't fight my way out of a wet sack. I know that. But when men with poisoned darts come up this mountain, Doran, there is going to be blood, and there is going to be pain, and there is not one soul in this hold who can do what I can do with a wounded body. You need a great many things right now. You need a healer more than most of them." She lifted her chin. "So I'm staying, not because you asked, because I'm needed." "Those are different things." "They came for me," I said. "If they take this hold, they will not spare the human woman who healed the Alpha's wolf. Do you understand what you're choosing?" "I understood it the night I chose it," she said, and her voice did not shake at all. "I chose it when I didn't walk back down that first morning, and I've known it every morning since. I'm not a brave woman, Doran. I've spent my whole life running from the thing in me that people call witchcraft, keeping my head down, being the small useful hands woman no one looks at twice. But I am done running down mountains away from things. This one I'm staying for." I crossed the room to her. Bram had followed me from the hall and stood in the doorway, healed and watchful. I stopped close enough to see the lamplight in her eyes. "When this is over," I said low, "and the mountain is safe, there is a thing I mean to say to you. I will not say it now. I will not have you say yes to a king because his hold is under threat and his blood is up. I want you to be able to hear it in the quiet with nothing pressing on you and answer only what your own heart answers, so I will hold it until then." I let out a breath. "But I want you to know it is there, so that whatever comes you go into it knowing." She was very still. "You could just say it," she whispered. "No," I said. "You taught me that. You don't go straight at the wounded place. You ease everything around it first until the body stops bracing and then it opens on its own." I almost smiled. "I'm learning your craft, healer, slowly." The color came up in her face and her eyes were bright, and she did not step back. "Then ease away, my king," she said, unsteady and half laughing, "and I'll try not to snap at your hand." They came 4 nights later, in the black hour before dawn, up the 2 passes that led to Emberhold, more of them than the raider had promised. But I had had 4 nights to ready my hold, and a king who knows the blow is coming can do a great deal with it. I will not tell the whole of that fight. It was long and it was ugly, and good souls of mine died on the snow, and there is no glory in it worth the telling. We held the passes. We drove them back down the mountain in the gray first light with far fewer of them going down than had come up. Bram fought at my side the whole of it, healed and terrible, and I understood watching him that Ilse had not only saved my wolf's life, but given me back my right arm on the one night I needed it most. It was near the end, when the fight was all but won, that I made the mistake that nearly finished me. I saw one of them break past the line toward the hold itself, toward the healer's room, toward the wing where I had put the wounded and the old and the young to keep them from the fighting, toward her, and I stopped thinking like a king and started running like a man with something to lose. I caught him in the passage outside the healer's room. I killed him. And as he fell dying, he drove his short blade up under my ribs, and it was black-fletched at the hilt, the same as the dart, smeared with the same plum-dark poison, And I felt it go in, and I felt the cold of it start to spread, and I thought, with a strange, clear calm, ah, so it was for me after all. My legs went. I remember the floor coming up. I remember Bram's howl. I remember, very close, Ilsa's voice saying my name, not soft now, sharp. A healer's voice cutting through everything, and her hands on me, tearing my shirt aside, finding the wound, finding the black climbing edge of it. Doran, Doran, stay with me. You do not have my leave to go, do you hear? Stay. It's the same, I said. My mouth had gone clumsy. The poison the same as Bram's. You can't go near it, his body fought you. His body did, she said. Yours is going to trust me, because I'm going to make it. And she pressed the heel of her hand hard against a point below my collarbone, and then another at my wrist, and another at the center of me, moving fast now, easing the road to the wound the way she had eased it in my wolf, so that when she finally laid her fingers over the black-edged cut itself, my body had forgotten to guard it, and did not fight her and let her in. The last thing I remember clearly is her face above me in the lamplight, wet with tears she did not have time to wipe, her hands moving over me with that terrible calm certainty, murmuring to me, now not to a wolf, I've got you. I've got you. You brave, foolish man running at a blade for me. I've got you, don't you dare, don't you dare. And I remember thinking, going down into the dark with her hands holding me to the world, she found my point too. She found it the first night. She's been holding it loose this whole time. That's why I can't clench around this. That's why I can let go and trust her to hold me. Then the dark took me, but it gave me back. I woke 3 days later in my own chambers, weak as a new pup, with sunlight on the snow outside the windows and Bram's great head heavy on my legs, and Ilsa asleep in a chair drawn close to the bed, her hand still lying open on the coverlet beside mine, as though she had fallen asleep in the middle of reaching for me. I lay still a long while and watched her sleep. I have stood in a great many places in my life that a king is told to prize, my father's throne, the high seat at the winter feast, the head of a war line with 1,000 wolves at my back. None of them had ever felt the way that quiet room felt, with the light coming in and her breathing near me, and the knot in my chest gone so completely I could barely remember its weight. When she woke and found me watching, she came up out of the chair with a small cry, and her hands were on me at once, at my throat, my brow, reading me, and only when she was satisfied that I was truly back did she let herself sit down again, hard, and put her face in her hands and shake. You were nearly gone, she said, muffled. The poison was in deep. I've never worked so hard for anyone. I kept thinking, if I lose him, I'll have healed his wolf and his whole pack and lost the one. She stopped herself. The one, I said. She lowered her hands. Her eyes were red and fierce. You said there was a thing you meant to say to me when the mountain was safe, she said. The mountain's safe. You held the passes. The band is broken. The ones that lived have scattered. It's quiet. A breath. So, it's quiet, and there's nothing pressing on either of us but the sunlight, and I healed you with my own 2 hands, so I've decided I've earned the right to go first. She lifted her chin the way she had that night by the lamp. I'm not going back down the mountain, Doran. Not ever, if you'll have me. I walked into your hall thinking I'd save a wolf and be gone by morning, and instead I found the one place in the whole world where the thing in me that everyone called witchcraft is just me, and welcome, and loved. I found a pack that stopped being afraid of my hands. I found a boy who left his stick against the wall. I found a wolf who lets me press 2 fingers to his heart. And I found you, a king holding himself clenched around 40 years of grief, and I want to spend the rest of my life keeping that knot loose. So, there. That's mine, said. Now you may say yours, and I'll try to be surprised. I laughed. It hurt, and I did not care, and I turned my hand over on the coverlet so that her open palm lay against mine. Ilsa, I said, I've been an alpha king since I was 9 years old, and in all that time I did not know there was a point in me where all the holding lived, until a human woman walked out of a snowstorm and pressed it loose without ever meaning to. You didn't only save my wolf. You didn't only save my pack or my life. You reached into the one shut place no healer and no spring in 1,000 years could reach, and you opened it, and you have kept it open every day since with nothing but your steady, quiet hands. I closed my fingers around hers. I want you as my mate, my Luna, my equal at the high seat and in the healer's room both. Not because you are useful, though you are the most useful soul this hold has ever seen, but because you are the point my whole life turned on and I have known it since the first night and I am done holding it in. Stay. Not because I'm asking, because you're wanted. Those are different things. A wise woman taught me that once. She made a sound that was half a laugh and half a sob, and she leaned down and pressed her brow to mine, careful of the healing wound, her hand still folded in mine, and Bram sighed and thumped his tail against the bed, and outside the snow gleamed white and clean over the whole quiet mountain. Yes, she whispered against my skin. Yes, you foolish, foolish king. Yes. There is not much more to tell, and what there is only happiness, which is a poor thing to make a long story of. She became my Luna before the whole of the High-Reach, and there was no scorn left in the pack to humble by then. They had turned long since, one healed hand and one quieted pup at a time, and on the day I took her hand at the high seat they roared for her until the rafters rang, the human woman who had saved their Alpha's wolf and their Alpha's life. Osric did not roar. But Osric came to me a few days after, stiff and old and having clearly rehearsed it a long while, and asked whether the Luna would consent to take an apprentice who was too proud by half and had a great deal to unlearn, and I sent him to ask her himself. She took him. She was kinder to his pride than I would have been. Within the year the two of them worked side by side, and the old wolf craft and the human hand's craft grew into each other, into something neither pack had ever had before, and men and wolves came from 3 valleys over to be healed at Emberhold. The boy who left his stick against the wall grew up to run the passes faster than any hunter in the hold. Bram lived 7 more winters, healed and whole, and to the end of his days he would let no one but 2 souls in the world lay a hand on him, his king and his king's mate. And of the 2 of us I think in his old heart he loved her a little more, and I did not blame him. And the knot in my chest never came back. Some days, the hard ones, I would feel it begin to draw tight again, a grief remembered, a fear for the pack, the old boy's habit of holding. And on those days I would find her, wherever she was in the hold, and she would set aside whatever she was doing and take my hand and press 2 fingers to the quiet place below my collarbone that only she had ever found, and say, "Lo, there, let it go, I've got it," and I would. That is the thing I would tell you if you asked me what she gave me. Not my wolf's life, though she gave me that. Not my own, though she gave me that too. She gave me the one point where a king was allowed to set his burden down. She found it the first night, with her whole attention on a dying beast, without ever knowing she'd found mine as well. And she has kept it loose for me every day since, with nothing in all the world but her steady, quiet, unafraid hands. I forbade my wolf to die that first night as if a king could forbid anything to death. I could not have saved him. I could not have saved myself. But she walked up the mountain out of the snow, and she found the one still point, and she pressed, and everything that had been clenched in me for a lifetime at last let go.